We start in the midst of a thunderstorm, as a man called Mike Enslin checks into a supposedly haunted hotel. But the room turns out to be a rather basic bitch and more uneventful than a Joe Biden rally. Apparently, this Enslin geezer's totally an author who writes about haunted hotels and shit. And after signing some books for less than 5 fuckers in a library, he tries to cheer himself up and do some surfing in the sea, but then gets attacked by a huge wave because the ocean fucking hates washed up actors laying about on top of it, and so promptly washes up this John Cusack looking fella on a beach. He then goes to his local post office to retrieve his mail and says hello to the desk clerk called Jackson, who really loves his books and shit. Sorting through said mail in a dingy diner, a superfan sends him a postcard of the Dolphin Hotel in New York and ominously warns him not to enter room 1408. Seeing potential dollar signs for his next book, What He Can Flog to 5 Miserable Fuckers in a Library, he calls up the swanky hotel, but they won't let him stay in said room under any circumstances. So naturally, his agent has the company's lawyer threaten legal action, and he gets a reservation quicker than you can say God bless lawsuits. So he checks in upon arrival, and after being randomly asked if he needs help with the one bag he is effortlessly carrying because reasons, the manager, who looks suspiciously like he once had to fend off a bunch of snakes on a plane, greets him and promptly asks him to step into his office. He then tries to bribe him with dinner reservations, sports tickets, and even a VIP seat at the next Avengers premiere, if he only promises to shut up about room 1408 and agrees to stay in literally any other room. Apparently, there's been a fuck ton of deaths and suicides in that particular room, and this Gerald Onin fella, what looks like he loves assembling superheroes for team-up movies in another life, once again tries to bribe Mikey Boy with a bottle of brandy from 1939. But he don't want no stinking booze, and cynically says, stop trying to scare me off with campfire ghost stories and just give me the bleeding key already. Gerald states that there's been 4 deaths under his watch alone, and so I'm assuming that he's just rather worried that a 5th one will totally send the coppers snooping. Anyway, Jerry goes on to describe all the horrific ways in which guests of that cursed room have topped themselves, and Mike mocks him by finishing his sentences and showing off all of his extensive research knowledge about the case. Gerald then says, alright you sarky git, bet you didn't know about them 22 natural deaths up there, because the papers don't want to write about people dying normally, but still it's well strange though. So I guess that puts the total up to 56 deaths in one room, including one dopey fella what drowned in his own soup. Gerald then tries to scare him off one last time by stating, nobody lasts more than an hour in that room. But that just gives Mike even more of a raging lob on. And before Jez can say, for God's sake man, it's an evil fucking room, dude. He's got the key and is up there like a rat up a drain pipe. Anyway, Nick Fury, Gerald Olin, escorts him up to the 14th floor, but then refuses to exit the lift like a riot cack. So Mike inserts his shiny tool into the deep creaky hole and sets off a Jamie action. Steady. Once inside the room, Mikey Boy's more disappointed than a Biden voter drowning in college debt, and reckons he's been sold another basic bitch of a room. And he's soon so bored that he can't even be bothered to watch hotel porn, and even resorts to reading a friggin' Bible to pass the time. Until he grabs some toilet paper and wipes his neck, and then sits in bed describing all the boring ass paintings what are hanging on the walls into his dictaphone, who he tragically seems to treat as his best friend and treasured companion. He goes on to describe the city view out the window, as suddenly the radio turns on playing ye olde music, with 2 chocolate mints randomly appearing on the pillow. You know, if ghosts gave out little candies when they turned up to haunt your gaff, I'd be well okay with them hanging around for a bit. But when they only open and shut cupboards whilst tugging on your ankle onto the covers in the middle of the night, well then they can fuck right off, son. Anyway, he reckons someone's in the room with him and even spots that the toilet paper is back to being freshly folded, which otherwise means he must have the most politely conscientious ghost since fucking Casper. But he finds no one else around, and getting rather warm, he calls down to the concierge to fix his thermostat stat. After doing some more narrating about the state of the room into his dictaphone, he looks at some spunk stains on the walls via UV light because reasons. Before finding the main living room painting askew, and going full boomer by being startled by a black man. Bruh. This fella also cucks out and refuses to enter the room, and tells Mike how to repair it from the threshold, cause any old jackass can fix those things, and apparently his skills and talents are completely unnecessary. God, Talk about talking yourself out of a job. And clearly, the geezer ain't paid by the hour, because he gets the fuck out of Dodge faster than Usain Bolt bolts to the toilets on Taco Bell night. Later, the radio turns on again and ominously starts counting down from 60 minutes, referencing back to that statement that Gerald made earlier about how no one lasts more than an hour in that room. Not even Zach Bagans. Then a strange ringing noise appears, and so naturally, he sticks his head out the window before it slams down on his hand because reasons. Then the phone rings and he tells the concierge that he's had enough and totally wants to check out now because he has a hurty hand and shit. But he can't get out the door because he breaks off the knob like a ride dope. So he then goes back to the window. You know, the same one that just randomly decided to guillotine his knuckles for shits and giggles. And then tries to signal to the man in the opposite flat for help. But the cheeky rando then starts copying his movements like a right annoying troll, before some baldy hobo ghost tries to hammer him worse than Paul Pelosi's local rent boy. LOL! Now in the throes of panic and losing all touch with reality, he cowers in the corner of the room and tries to make logical scientific sense of his predicament by blaming it all on hallucinations and shit, before going full Alex Jones conspiratard and thinking that the manager Gerald Olin has spiked his brandy or something. But then the TV turns itself on and proceeds to play his family home videos, where his daughter calls him the third ugliest person in the room just ahead of two goldfish. Not a joke. Still in a state of shock, he then starts seeing suicidal ghosts in low quality 360p, before randomly finding his dad in a weird bathroom and talking in ominous riddles. Anyway, the walls then start to cosplay as my hemorrhoids when they start to crack and bleed red, and he remembers reading about how you can't die in your dreams and the shock of hitting pavement wakes you up and shit. But he cucks out of topping himself to prove it's all a dream, so instead tries to shuffle over to the next door window. But the ghoulies troll him harder than Paul Feig trolled fans with that god-awful Ghostbusters reboot, when the spooks do a cheeky mod and remove the windows, making the exterior he's climbing across just one endless friggin' wall. Back inside, someone's changed up the interior decor and there's now brick walls all over the gaff. And he's confronted by a memory of when his rude daughter, who thinks he's uglier than two goldfish, was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and he almost gets killed by that random baldy hobo ghost again. Then he remembers that he totally had a friggin' laptop the whole time. What? And so starts to Skype his ex Lily to say that he's trapped in a 5-star hotel room. And naturally, she just says that's nice but don't rub it in, son. But he just yells about how some ghoulies are totally trying to kill him. And she asks, well, who am I going to call? And before you can say, I don't know, but it better not be Kristen Wiig and a bunch of femtard clowns, the sprinklers go off and electrify the circuits, leaving this now crooked laptop dodgier than Hunter Biden's. So he climbs into a ceiling vent where he's soon chased by another ghost, before ranting at an empty refrigerator because reasons. And hopeless angry desperation, I guess. Then he sees a mini Sam Jackson dwarf fella saying peeps like to believe in ghosts because of the prospect of there being something after death. And Mike has shattered so many hopes in his books by being such an insufferable joyless cynic. So he beats up an innocent fridge, before having another IRL flashback to when his dying daughter asked all about the afterlife, and how he had to lie to her face when she asked whether he believed it exists and if other people will be there to play with, before being tormented by visions of the aftermath where he regretted not telling her to fight more, rather than just give up and go be with that god fella what lives in the sky but who no one's ever actually seen. And that's how he became jaded, cynical and bitter about life, and why he and Lily split up and shit. And here I was thinking that she just woke up one morning and realised she was married to John Cusack. But hey ho. Then the ghosties hilariously stick two fingers up at him by 3D faxing his dead daughter's dress to him for shits and giggles. But before he can say, that's the darkest thing I've seen since that chocolate fella earlier, the room goes literally ice cold. Presumably because he fucked up the thermostat earlier and is thus more useless than a jackass, and rambles about being in the lowest circle of hell where all the bad people go. Although this place looks nothing like Epstein Island to me, but whatevs. Suddenly though, the busted up laptop turns itself on, and his ex Lilybird is now Skyping him about how the coppers are already in 1408 and it's totally empty, bro. So he must be pranking her harder than an Ashton Kutcher skit on early noughties MTV. And even worse, the clock timer is running out, and the ghosties take over his Wi-Fi connection by using his own face as a filter, and tell her to come over to the hotel and head on up to 1408, presumably because she thinks it's for one last booty call, where she says, "Hot diggity, I'll hot-tail it over there right now, bro. Also, suddenly, all the paintings come to life, including the watery one, and the room then gets more trash than Josh Trank's temporary apartment. Allegedly. As Mike randomly smashes the painting where it gushes more liquid than the cam girl on Chatterbait, and the fella soon drowns in the deluge. But then he wakes up back on that beach from earlier, where he got knocked around by that wave what hates washed up actors, and then comes around in a hospital where Lily says he just had a surfing accident and everything's totally fine, bro. And before you can say, well, this seems totally legit even though there's another 20 minutes of runtime to go, he gets on living his totally real life and even takes her out to dinner, where he suddenly notices that some of the waiters look suspiciously like them hotel ghost people what exist in 360p quality, but he just shrugs and thinks,
nah, it'll be fine.
So he visits the post office again like usual, but quickly realises that that superfan Jackson man is now that random bellboy, who wanted to help him carry his one bag what he was already effortlessly carrying at the start of the film. And before long, all the people start smashing up the gaff, revealing that he's still in that bleeding cursed room with the dodgy radio and shit. Despairing and despondent, he begins to hear the voice of his deceased little girl, who reckons he's a right munter, and the dishevelled ghost of his dead child walks over to him across the rubble and bare-blooded feet to give him a cold hug, before he holds her so tight that he crushes the poor lass into a bunch of crumbly bones. Then he gets bare angry, and smashes the place up so hard that he knocks himself over somehow, where he proceeds to see the clock timer ticking down to 0. Then the room resets, and the poor fucker has to relive the same torturous hour over and over until he, quote, checks out, which is exactly how I felt having to resit my GCSE maths exams back in the day. But he flat out refuses to top himself like a right cuck and wants to go out on his own terms. That concierge bird on the ghost phone then tells him that his wife is on her way to the room and is totally going to get herself cursed up, bro. And so his long-time selfish ass decides to do the only selfless thing he can to finally protect others, which is to take the room down with him, and so proceeds to set the whole gaff on fire before sitting down to have a little smoke. The hotel is then promptly evacuated as firemen eventually save Mike from the flames, where he tries to warn them about not going into that cursed room with all the ghoulies in it. But his voice is so charred that he goes full Bane, and is more inaudible than a Christopher Nolan movie. The room number then melts in close-up because symbolism, bro, before he wakes up in another hospital with Lily, who simply says that the fire was caused by old wiring, and totally not haunty-baldy ghosts making him go mad and shit. She also asks why he left her after they lost their child, and he just says because every time he looked at her he saw Katie. And how she isn't utterly insulted at being told she looks just like a 12-year-old dead girl, I don't know. And in the movie's closing sequence, we see Mike take out his old dictaphone, where he listens back to his garbled ramblings in the course of the night to hear his dead daughter Katie was totally captured on the recorder, proving to his once cynical self and confirming to his wife that there is the prospect of something beyond death after all. And that's it. That's the movie. But wowzers, what an ending. I just love the ambiguous double meaning of the final line, as Mike hears himself telling Katie, I've got you and I'm not going to let you go, as his horrified wife then realises that either the afterlife is real and their child is a ghost, or that she really did go up to 1408, got herself cursed, and now she's trapped in her own delusion, as Mike's wry smiley smirk seems to imply. But man, I still have so many questions. Like, what was that baldy hobo ghost about? Or even his dad? And how do these spooks manifest chocolate? And is it only certain brands? I mean, what if I don't like mint and prefer Swiss nougat? Would a giant fuck-off Toblerone then appear on my pillow? Well, knowing my luck, it'll be a fucking toffee penny from the bottom dregs of the Christmas Quality Street tin. Bruh. But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Considering that bell thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time, and I'll see you in the next one.